All right, now it's showing me that I actually am live. But it's not showing that on my channel. Oh, did I do it? Stream is healthy. But it's not actually showing me the stream itself. Just want to see the stream be live. Okay, there we go. Okie dokie. So, I got all my nonsense out on another stream. That's why this is coming up so late. But we are going to read the book. My name is Brooke. I do a lot of babbling. And thanks to Tara, that's why this stream is now called Babbling Brooke. And I'm going to be reading a book for Brooke Club, which is my book club that I haven't set up yet, but will. Hopefully we are all looking back on this from the future and laughing at me, because that's my favorite thing to do. And there's a lot of glare on my glasses. Alexa, turn off the vanity light. It was a little warm, but Alexa, office light 70%. Alexa, office lights 50%. Whatever. Okay, we're just going to turn the brightness up from there. You guys are going to get to watch. It'll be great. It's my favorite thing. Whatever. We're just going to start streaming. Okie dokie. So, we are reading The Handmaid's Tale. The purpose of this is primarily for voice training for me, so that I have a structured time in which I do it, and an outlet to receive criticism, constructive please, and so I can look back and see my progress. So, last time we left off, I think we're on chapter 3. It got dark faster than I was anticipating it was going to. It seems, the imagery is very nice so far. Yeah, I don't really know what else to tell you. There's an interesting, dichotomy of the speaker talking about modern day things like that would go on in a high school gymnasium, as if they're the past, and then launching right into what we would think would be from the past, which I know is a whole thing. I haven't seen the television show or even heard anything about it or anything. That's sort of why I picked this one, because it was 1, on Kindle Unlimited, and 2, because I like going to things blind. I think the best time I've ever had at a movie theater was when I saw Interstellar. And I had not seen a single trailer. I hadn't seen a single anything. And I loved that experience. Alexa, turn the vanity lights to 40%. Way too bright. Alexa, vanity lights 10%.
Did you mean vanity?
Sure did. Alexa, vanity light 10%. That camera a little bit. And then we get to do another favorite thing of mine, which is undo what I just did. Did my makeup a while ago, and you can see coming through here. Not my favorite, but I got laser done recently, so it's really hard to fix that, Oh, I'm going the wrong way. All right. That's because we're going to get. Let's get right into reading it. And I will. I've been doing my voice training stream. I haven't been trying on my voice at all. So we're going to actually try from now forward. I'm just doing great today. I go out by the back door into the garden, which is large and tidy. A lawn in the middle, a willow, weeping catkins around the edges, the flower borders in which daffodils are now fading and the tulips are opening their cups, spilling out color. Their tulips are red, a darker crimson towards the stem, as if they had been cut and are beginning to heal there. This garden is the domain of the commander's wife. Looking out through my shatterproof window, I've often seen her in it, her knees on a cushion, a light blue veil thrown over her wide gardening hat, a basket at her side with shears in it and pieces of string for tying the flowers into place. A guardian detailed to the commander's does the heavy digging. The commander's wife directs, pointing with her stick. Many of the wives have such gardens. It's something for them to order and maintain and care for. I once had a garden. I can remember the smell of the turned earth, the plump shapes of bulbs held in the hands, fullness, the dry rustle of seeds through the fingers. Time could pass more swiftly that way. Sometimes the commander's wife has a chair brought out and just sits in it, in her garden. From a distance it looks like peace. She isn't here now, and I start to wonder where she is. I don't like to come upon the commander's wife unexpectedly. Perhaps she's sewing, in the sitting room, with her left foot on the footstool because of her arthritis. Or knitting scarves for the angels at the front lines. I can hardly believe the angels have need for such scarves anyway. The ones made by the commander's wife are too elaborate. She doesn't bother with the cross and star pattern used by many of the other wives. It's not a challenge. Fir trees marching across the end of her scarves. Or eagles, or stiff humanoid figures, boy and girl, boy and girl. They aren't scarves for grown men, but for children. Sometimes I think these scarves aren't sent to the angels at all, but unraveled and turned back into balls of yarn to be knitted again in their turn. Maybe it's just something to keep the wives busy, to give them a sense of purpose. But I envy the commander's wife her knitting. It's good to have small goals that can be easily attained. What does she envy me? She doesn't speak to me, unless she can't avoid it. I'm a reproach to her, and a necessity. We stood face to face for the first time 5 weeks ago, when I arrived at this posting. The guardian from the previous posting brought me to the front door. On first days we are permitted front doors, but after that we're supposed to use the back. Things haven't settled down. It's too soon. Everyone is unsure about our exact status. After a while it will be either all front doors or all back. Aunt Lydia said she was lobbying for the front. Yours is a position of honor, she said. The guardian rang the doorbell for me, but before there was time for someone to hear and walk quickly to answer, the door opened inward. She must have been waiting behind it. I was expecting a Martha, but it was her instead, in her long powder blue robe, unmistakable. So, you're the new one, she said. She didn't step aside to let me in. She just stood there in the doorway, blocking the entrance. She wanted me to feel that I could not come into the house unless she said so. There's push and shove these days over such toeholds. Yes, I said. Leave it on the porch. She said this to the guardian, who was carrying my bag. The bag was red vinyl and not large. There was another bag, with the winter cloak and heavier dresses, but that would be coming later. The guardian sat down the bag and saluted her. Then I could hear his footsteps behind me, going back down the walk, and the click of the front gate, and I felt as if a protective arm were being withdrawn. The threshold of a new house is a lonely place. The threshold of a new house is a lonely place. She waited until the car started up and pulled away. I wasn't looking at her face, but at the part of her I could see with my head lowered. Her blue waist thickened, her left hand on the ivory head of her cane, the large diamonds on the ring finger, which must have once been fine and was still finely kept, the fingernail at the end of the knuckly finger filed to a gentle, curving point. It was like an ironic smile on that finger, like something mocking her. You might as well come in, she said. She turned her back on me and limped down the hall. Shut the door behind you. I lifted my red bag inside, as she'd no doubt intended, then closed the door. I didn't say anything to her. Aunt Lydia said it was best not to speak unless they asked you a direct question. Try to think of it from their point of view, she said, her hands clasped and wrung together, her nervous, pleading smile. It isn't easy for them. In here, said the commander's wife. When I went into the sitting room, she was already in her chair, her left foot on the footstool, with its petite point cushion, roses in a basket. Her knitting was on the floor beside the chair, the needle stuck through it. I stood in front of her, hands folded. So, she said. She had a cigarette, and she put it between her lips and gripped it there while she lit it. Her lips were thin, held that way, with the small vertical lines around them you used to see in advertisements for lip cosmetics. The lighter was ivory-colored. The cigarettes must have come from the black market, I thought, and this gave me hope. Even now that there is no real money anymore, there's still a black market. There's always a black market. There's always something that can be exchanged. She then was a woman who might bend the rules, but what did I have to trade? I looked at the cigarette with longing. For me, like liquor and coffee, they are forbidden. So, old What's-His-Face didn't work out, she said. No, ma'am, I said. She gave what must have been a laugh, then coughed. Tough luck on him, she said. This is your second, isn't it? Third, ma'am, I said. Not so good for you either, she said. There was another coughing laugh. You can sit down. I don't make a practice of it, but just this time. I did sit, on the edge of one of the stiff-backed chairs. I didn't want to stare around the room. I didn't want to appear inattentive to her, so the marble mantelpiece to my right, and the mirror over it, and the bunches of flowers were just shadows then, at the edges of my eyes. Later, I would have more than enough time to take them in. Now, her face was level with mine. I thought I recognized her, or at least there was something familiar about her. A little of her hair was showing from under her veil. It was still blonde. I thought then that maybe she bleached it, that hair dye was something else she could get through the black market. But I know now that it really is blonde. Her eyebrows were plucked into thin, arched lines, which gave her a permanent look of surprise, or outrage, or inquisitiveness, such as you might see in a startled child. But below them her eyelids were tired-looking. Not so her eyes, which were the flat, hostile blue of a midsummer sky in bright sunlight, a blue that shuts you out. Her nose must have once been what was called cute, but was now too small for her face. Her face was not fat, but it was large. 2 lines led downward from the corners of her mouth. Between them was her chin, clenched like a fist. I want to see as little of you as possible, she said. I expect you to feel the same way about me. I didn't answer, as a yes would have been insulting, a no contradictory. I know you aren't stupid, she went on. She inhaled, blew out the smoke. I've read your file. As far as I'm concerned, this is a business transaction, but if I get trouble, I'll give trouble back. You understand? Yes, ma'am, I said. Don't call me ma'am, she said irritably. You're not a Martha. I didn't ask what I was supposed to call her, because I could see that she hoped that I would never have the occasion to call her anything at all. I was disappointed. I wanted, then, to turn her into an older sister, a motherly figure, someone who would understand and protect me. The wife in my posting before this had spent most of her time in her bedroom. The Martha said she drank. I wanted this one to be different. I wanted to think I would have liked her, in another time and place, another life. But I could see already that I wouldn't have liked her, nor she me. She put her cigarette out, half-smoked, in a little scrolled ashtray on the lamp table beside her. She did this decisively, one jab and one grind, not the series of genteel taps favored by many of the wives. As for my husband, she said, he's just that, my husband. I want that to be perfectly clear. To death do us part. It's final. Yes, ma'am, I said, forgetting. They used to have dolls, for little girls, that would talk if you pulled a string at the back. I thought I was sounding like that, voice of a monotone, voice of a doll. She probably longed to slap my face. They can hit us, there's scriptural precedent, but not with any implement, only with their hands. It's one of the things we fought for, said the commander's wife, and suddenly she wasn't looking at me. She was looking down at her knuckled, diamond-studded hands, and I knew where I'd seen her before. The first time was on television, when I was 8 or 9. It was when my mother was sleeping in on Sunday mornings, and I would get up early and go to the television set in my mother's study. and flipped through the channels looking for cartoons. Sometimes, when I couldn't find any, I would watch the Growing Souls Gospel Hour, where they would tell Bible stories for children and sing hymns. One of the women was called Serena Joy. She was a lead soprano. She was ash blonde, petite, with a snub nose and huge blue eyes which she turned upward during hymns. She could smile and cry at the same time, one tear or two sliding gracefully down her cheek, as if on cue, as her voice lifted through its highest notes, tremulous, effortless. It was after that she went on to other things. The woman sitting in front of me was Serena Joy, or had been, once. It was worse than I thought. See how many pages chapter 4 is. Going for 15, okay, I'm going to go for at least 20. I walk along the gravel path that divides the back lawn, neatly, like a hair parting. It has rained during the night. The grass to either side is damp, the air humid. Here and there are worms, evidence of the fertility of the soil, caught by the sun, half dead, flexible and pink, like lips. I open the white picket gate and continue, past the front lawn and towards the front gate. In the driveway, one of the guardians assigned to our household is washing the car. That must mean the commander is in the house, in his own quarters. Past the dining room and beyond, where he seems to stay most of the time. The car is a very expensive one, a whirlwind, better than the chariot, much better than the chunky practical behemoth. It's black, of course, the color of prestige or a hearse, and long and sleek. The driver is going over it with a chamois, lovingly. This at least hasn't changed. The way men caress good cars. I can't remember ever caressing a car. But I'm not a very good man, am I? He's wearing the uniform of the Guardians, but his cap is tilted at a jaunty angle, and his sleeves are rolled up to the elbow, showing his forearms. Tanned, but with a stipple of dark hairs, he has a cigarette stuck in the corner of his mouth, which shows that he too has something he can trade on the black market. I know this man's name, Nick. I know this because I've heard Rita and Cora talking about him. And I once heard the commander speaking to him. Nick, I won't be needing the car. Can I do a commander's voice? Nick, I won't be needing the car. He's the only one who's British. He lives here, in the household, over the garage. Low status. He hasn't been issued a woman, not even one. He doesn't rate. Some defect, lack of connections. But he acts as if he doesn't know this or care. He's too casual. He's not servile enough. It may be stupidity, but I don't think so. Smells fishy, they used to say, or I smell a rat. Misfit is odor. Despite myself, I think of how he might smell. Not fish or decaying rat, tan skin, moist in the sun, filmed with smoke. I sigh, inhaling. He looks at me and sees me looking. He has a French face, lean, whimsical, all planes and angles, with creases around the mouth where he smiles. He takes a final puff of the cigarette, lets it drop to the driveway, and steps on it. He begins to whistle. Then he winks. I drop my head and turn so that the white wings hide my face, and keep walking. He's just taken a risk, but for what? What if I were to report him? Perhaps he was merely being friendly. Perhaps he saw the look on my face and mistook it. Yes?
Oh, okay. You're in here. I wasn't sure if you were in here or in there.
Yep. Sorry. Perhaps he was merely being friendly. Perhaps he saw the look on my face and mistook it for something else. Really, what I wanted was the cigarette. Perhaps it was a test, to see what I'd do. Perhaps he is an eye. I open the front gate and close it behind me, looking down but not back. The sidewalk is red brick. That is the landscape I focus on, a field of oblongs, gently undulating where the earth beneath is buckled, from decade after decade of winter frost. The color of the bricks is old, yet fresh and clear. Sidewalks are kept much cleaner than they used to be. I walk to the corner and wait. I used to be bad at waiting. They also serve who only stand and wait, said Aunt Lydia. She made us memorize it. She also said, "Not all of you will make it through. Some of you will fall on dry ground or thorns. Some of you are shallow-rooted." She had a mole on her chin that went up and down while she talked. She said, "Think of yourselves as seeds." And right then her voice was wheedling, conspiratorial, like the voices of those women who used to teach ballet classes to children, and who would say, arms up in the air now, "Let's pretend we're trees." I stand on the corner, pretending I'm a tree. A shape, red with white wings around the face, a shape like mine, a nondescript woman in red carrying a basket, comes along the brick sidewalk towards me. She reaches me, and we peer at each other's faces, looking down the white tunnels of cloth that enclose us. She is the right one. "Blessed be the fruit," she says to me, the accepted greeting among us. "May the Lord open," I answer, the accepted response. We turn and walk together past the large houses towards the central part of town. We aren't allowed to go there except in twos. This is supposed to be for our protection, though the notion is absurd. We are well protected already. The truth is that she is my spy, as I am hers. If either of us slips through the net because of something that happens on one of our daily walks, the other will be accountable. This woman has been my partner for 2 weeks. I don't know what happened to the one before. On a certain day she simply wasn't there anymore, and this one was in her place. It isn't the sort of thing you ask questions about, because the answers are not usually answers you want to know. Anyway, there wouldn't be an answer. This one is a little plumper than I am. Her eyes are brown. Her name is Oftlin, and that's about all I know about her. She walks demurely, head down, red-gloved hands clasped in front, with short little steps like a trained pig's on its hind legs. During these walks, she has never said anything that was not strictly orthodox, but then, neither have I. She may be a real believer, a handmaiden more than name. I can't take the risk. "The war is going well, I hear," she says. "Praise be," I reply. "We've been sent good weather, to which I receive with joy. They've defeated more of the rebels since yesterday. Praise be, I say. I don't ask her how she knows. What were they? Baptists. They had a stronghold in the Blue Hills. They smoked them out. Praise be." Sometimes I wish you would just shut up and let me walk in peace. But I'm ravenous for news. Any kind of news, even if it's false news. It must mean something. We reach the barrier, which is like the barriers blocking off roadworks or dug-up sewers. A wooden crisscross painted in yellow and black stripes. A red hexagon, which means stop. Near the gateway, there are some lanterns, not lit because it isn't night. Above us, I know, there are floodlights attached to the telephone poles for use in emergencies, and there are men with machine guns in the pillboxes on either side of the road. I don't see the floodlights and the pillboxes because of the wings around my face. I just know they are there. Behind the barrier, waiting for us at the narrow gateway, there are 2 men in the green uniforms of the Guardians of the Faith, with the crests on their shoulders and berets. 2 swords, crossed above a white triangle. The Guardians aren't real soldiers. They're used for routine policing and other menial functions, digging up the commander's wife's garden, for instance. And they're either stupid, or older, or disabled, or very young, apart from the ones that are the incognito. These 2 are very young. One mustache is still sparse, one face still blotchy. Their youth is touching, but I know I can't be deceived by it. The young ones are often the most dangerous, the most fanatical, the jumpiest with their guns. They haven't yet learned about existence through time. You have to go slowly with them. Last week they shot a woman, right about here. She was a Martha. She was fumbling in her robe for her pass, and they thought she was hunting for a bomb. They thought she was a man in disguise. There have been such incidents. Rita and Cora knew the woman. I heard them talking about it in the kitchen. "Doing their job," said Cora. "Keeping us safe." "Nothing safer than dead," said Rita angrily. She was minding her own business. No call to shoot her. There's not a lot of quotation marks in this fucking book to tell you when someone is or isn't speaking. It was an accident, said Cora. No such thing, said Rita. Everything is meant. I could hear her thumping the pots around in the sink. Well, someone'll think twice before blowing up this house, anyway, said Cora. All the same, said Rita. She worked hard. That was a bad death. I can think of worse, said Cora. At least it was quick. You can say that, said Rita. I'd choose to have some time before, like, to set things right. The two young guardians salute us, raising 3 fingers to the rims of their berets. Such tokens are accorded to us. They are supposed to show respect because of the nature of our service. We produce our passes from the zippered pockets in our wide sleeves, and they are inspected and stamped. One man goes into the right-hand pillbox to punch our numbers into the CompuCheck. In returning my pass, the one with the peach-colored mustache bends his head to try to get a look at my face. I raise my head a little to help him, and he sees my eyes and I see his, and he blushes. His face is long and mournful, like a sheep's, but with the large, full eyes of a dog, a spaniel, not a terrier. His skin is pale and looks unwholesomely tender, like the skin under a scab. Nevertheless, I think of placing my hand on it. This exposed face, he is the one who turns away. It's an event, a small defiance of rule, so small as to be undetectable, but such moments are the rewards I hold out for myself, like the candy I hoarded as a child at the back of a drawer. Such moments are possibilities, tiny peepholes. What if I were to come at night, when he's on duty alone, though he would never be allowed such solitude, and permit him beyond my white wings? What if I were to peel off my red shroud and show myself to him, to them, by the uncertain light of the lanterns? This is what they must think about sometimes, as they stand endlessly beside this barrier, past which nobody ever comes except the commanders of the faithful in their long black murmurous cars, or their blue wives and the white-veiled daughters on their dutiful way to salvagings or pravaganzas, or their dumpy green Marthas, or the occasional birthmobile, or their red handmaids on foot. Or sometimes a black painted van with the winged eye in white on the side. The windows of the vans are dark tinted, and the men in the front seats wear dark glasses, a double obscurity. The vans are more silent than the other cars. When they pass, we avert our eyes. When they pass, we avert our eyes. If there are sounds coming from inside, we try not to hear them. Nobody's heart is perfect. When the black vans reach a checkpoint, they're waved through without a pause. The guardians would not want to take the risk of looking inside, searching, doubting their authority, whatever they think. If they do think, you can't tell by looking at them. But more likely, they don't think in terms of clothing discarded on the lawn. If they think of a kiss, then they think immediately of the floodlights going on, the rifle shots. They think instead of doing their duty, and of promotion to the angels, and of being allowed possibly to marry, and then, if they're able to gain enough power and live to be old enough, of being allocated a handmaid of their own. I'm getting a sneaking suspicion that she's a concubine of some sort. The one with the mustache opens a small pedestrian gate for us and stands back, well out of the way, and we pass through. As we walk away, I know they're watching, these 2 men who aren't yet permitted to touch women. They touch with their eyes instead, and I move my hips a little, feeling the full red skirt sway around me. It's like thumbing your nose from behind a fence or teasing a dog with a bone held out of reach, and I'm ashamed of myself for doing it, because none of this is the fault of these men. They're too young. Then I find I'm not ashamed, after all. I enjoy the power of a dog bone, passive, but there. I hope they get hard at the sight of us and have to rub themselves against the painted barriers surreptitiously. They will suffer, later, at night, in their regimented beds. They have no outlets now except themselves, and that's a sacrilege. There are no more magazines, no more films, no more substitutes, only me and my shadow, walking away from the 2 men who stand at attention, stiffly, by a roadblock, watching our retreating shapes. Getting steamy. Oh, that was rough with my voice. You can tell it goes from breathy to hollow to all sorts of different things. So that is through chapter 4 of Handmaid's Tale. Not gonna lie, I kind of want to keep reading, but I will save it for tomorrow. I'm gonna work on getting the stream. I'm gonna get a Discord server up and running for the Brooke Club, and start fleshing out some details. I think that's a good idea. All right. Thanks for possibly watching.